What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Ovenged channel. On today's episode, we are back building our Amphibious Buggy, which, if you're just tuning in, is a 1980s era Tirajet. Now, these are amphibious from factory. Back in the 80s, they were kind of made agriculturally. If you guys are just tuning in, just to give you a rundown, we're actually putting full control arm suspension for, this is kind of like a little bit of a long travel type setup. But I want to keep amphibious capabilities. So if I roll up to a pond or a river or a lake, I can essentially float in that and not worry about sinking it. As you can see, we have a full flat tub in the center. And right now we're building our boxed A-arms. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a rundown on what I've done on the right side of the buggy. And I'll bring you guys along to the left side and we can make our side axles. We can make our control arms again, but let me just give you a quick rundown of the design here that I've come up with. Now, as you can see, we're going boxed control arms, boxed uppers and lowers. This is 1/8 mile steel plate. I can come in here afterwards and gusset essentially inside. I can do a couple plug holes and get that really strong. The bottom one, of course, is a little bit wider. The reason the top is cut out here is because this is our steering, which I'll touch on in a second. This is the bottom. So this is where, if I want to come into the future, I can have a really nice shock mount here, kind of come up, and we can put a crazy shock in here in the future, hopefully. The reason it's all tacked together right now is because I've lived with myself for 34 years, and I know myself, and it's always the way that if I weld it out solid, in a couple days I'm going to be like, hey, I should have done this different. I should have done this, or I should have done that. So that's one reason. Another reason is I may come in here and do quite a bit of bracing. I'll figure something out there. And the last reason is that I'm actually running out of shielding gas on my MIG welder. And it's the long weekend, so I'm just tacking everything together for now. Let's talk about steering. So unfortunately, the way the tub is designed on these, I couldn't put my steering shaft, I guess you would call this a steering shaft at this point. This is a factory Tirajet thing. This is the way it came from factory, albeit it was back here. These never had any suspension, if you guys have never seen any of this before. But I actually had to take my left spindle, put it on the right on the left, and this is where I had to run this. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this because, one, it puts everything in harm's way. And two, I don't know how that's going to affect Ackerman. I don't know if that's going to bind. I guess I could always put a stop here, but this is yet to be determined. And this is another factor I took into account when I made my upper control arm. Now we have tons of travel. I think that's quite a bit of travel. And as you can see, I'm actually up against my inner CV now. But at that point, the tub, the bottom of the tub is probably like an inch away from the ground. So I don't know when I'm actually coming here and weld these solid, if I'll make a relief cut here, just to give me a little, probably another inch or two. Not really sure, but that's yet to be determined. On the back, this is our back design that I've come up with. And as you can see, I got a plug weld here. So when I put my stiffener, I could plug weld in here. And if we get you this back shot, you can kind of see what's going to kind of happen here. And all this will be boxed and welded, and I'll have gussets inside. These tabs are 3/16. And this gives me the opportunity to come in here and weld and make all that one piece. And essentially I'll make another gusset up here, tie all that in. It'll be really nice and strong. The reason we went with this type of setup and I made it so narrow is so I get my wheel in here, because this thing is going to be pretty wide, guys. It's going to be a little bit wider than what I originally wanted, but I think we'll work around that. So what this narrow piece does, that allows me to run a lot of positive offset and shove my wheel in here, so my wheel's not essentially out here. Now, to talk about how wide this thing is going to be, I really wanted this thing to be around 74 inches. That was, up until a couple of weeks ago, the max width of, I believe, a Can-Am, whatever it was. Can-Am UTV. But right now, with this setup, with our Tirajet tires that we're going to be running, we're at 78 inches. So it's 2 inches on either side wider. I guess I could live with it. It's not a huge deal. We're not really building this to kind of be a trail buggy. I'm not really sure why we're building this, to be quite honest with you. But another thing we'll touch on, if we come down here, now you can kind of see how much travel we have. You can see the body is a little bit off on our body line.
Put some of the stuffing in the wrong places, so I'm a little fucked up.
The reason for that is that at some point of its life, it took a pretty good hit right here in the tub. And now that body is kind of rolled up like there. So cut that out. That's another body modification, another tub modification we have to do. But with all that being said, I think we're going to dive into it. We'll first start with our rear. I'll show you how I've done my side axles. Probably do the side axles first, get those hung, and then we'll start in at the upper and lower control arms. One thing I will touch on, I guess, while we're mid-conversation to get you up to snuff, the whole reason I went with boxed control arms is one, I think they're pretty beefy, they're pretty strong, they look badass. Two, I have a plasma table at my disposal, so this makes it really easy on me. I can take in a few measurements, put it all in the CAD, and then create a new symmetry, usually just mirror the image, and I can make this side essentially exactly like that side. So that makes it easy. Another thing that I'm kind of thinking, and this may be a little bit far-fetched, and I don't know if I'm right in saying this, when this does actually go in water, with these flat A-arms, there's more surface area. I feel like it would be a little bit more stable with the flat surface of our control arms against the water, as opposed to just tubular. Maybe that's a little bit far-fetched to think, maybe that's not even a thing. But someone smarter can definitely chime in below and correct me on that. I really appreciate learning different things. But that was one of my theories, believe it or not. So yeah, let's just dive in. Let's just fire up the bandsaw and I'll show you how I made my side axles, and then we'll just dive into our control arms. So this is our donor UTV axle, drive axle. What we're actually gonna do, we're actually gonna break this inner CV joint apart. And I actually come in here and I cut this, which I'll show you in a little bit of a machining process. But first, what we're going to do, we're going to just get this apart. We will be not using these factory type clamps ever again. So we'll just haul these apart. Clip there, and usually it decides to come out doing about 400. And that's how you get your inner CV kind of apart there. Now I'm going to bring this over to the bandsaw, and we're actually just going to make a cut on this, and then we get to repeat the process with the front drive axle. Now, as you can see in those time lapse, guys, we actually done a couple things. As you can see, we cut this out, and this is going to allow me, this is, once again, this is our inner CV joint. I actually blew these flanges out on a CNC table, and this is going to give us a nice tight fit. Right there. So now I can come in here, put a nice pass in here with TIG, nice flat pass. There's a little bit of dross on the back, that's why that's not really sitting the best right now. But you get the idea. And then I can come in here, clean all that up and weld along there, and that's going to give me my mounting flange. Now, these here are actually factory Tirajet yokes. This is how you get your turning angle. I've explained it a couple times, I believe, in the previous videos, if you want to go back and check that out. But these are actually absolutely just shot, guys, because what ended up happening there after welding in these cups, they kind of just fall apart. You can see that they're rusty. So these are essentially no good anymore anyways. So I'm going to use them to my advantage and use them for our PTO spline, our female PTO spline that shoves in over our axle. Then we are going to, now these take a little bit more machining than what you see. I just cut the ears off them, which are essentially these pieces. But we're actually going to come in here with, to create a little bit of a lip for this to slide on, keep everything center as much as possible. Once again, I'll use the exact same theory that we're using here. Nice flat weld, that will bolt there. that's how we get the power from our drive shafts out to our CV axles. So we'll jump over to the lathe and I'll show you what I do with these. All right guys, so we're over here at the lathe now, and what I'm going to try to do is face this off flat. The issue that I've kind of been having with the other couple is that I just pressed this piece in flat against my chuck, and I'm kind of hoping for the best. Being that there's so many ridges here on this, and that there's a couple square edges and tabs and writing, it's very hard to get this thing perfectly square. Now for this application, I think that's going to be very well enough just to... project. As you can see, face it down quite a bit. Now our flange will actually sit right there. We've cut these out on the CNC table like I previously stated. That'll give me a nice lip in here to weld to, and it'll keep it flush, so when two of these go together it will sit flush against each other, and that gives me quite a bit of meat around here to weld to. So now I have to come in here, clean all this up, probably with a grinder, weld all that around with the TIG welder, and yeah, we'll do the other one, and that should be it for our flange modification and our spline modification that will... So here it is, here's the finished product. As you can see, the best welding I've ever done, but definitely not the worst either. As you can see now, I came in here, welded inside. This will be for our front CV shaft, that's for the back. And these are going to be mounted to these via 4 bolts, and one of these will be front and back. But I think that'll be plenty strong for what we're trying to achieve here. I'm going to wait for all that to cool down because that's ignorantly hot right now, and we can throw that together, and then we can start in at our control arms. Hopefully we can get this thing down on tires and rolling around so I don't have to mess around with the forklift. That's the goal anyways. So I've come in here and installed, well, I've put the inner CV joint back together, put in our flanges here. Now, as you can see, this is kind of just the old hardware I had around. Don't worry, we will rectify that in the future. So that one is hung. That one is ready to go. As you can see, along with our back one as well, packed this full of new grease and kind of rebuild it a little bit and before the final product. But this will get new stainless hardware, similar to what this stuff is, this stainless bands or whatever they're called. I don't know what they're called. So, as you can see, we got a couple pieces cut out already, but I have it set up on the table to cut out our control arms. So that's going to be the next step in this whole process. As you can see, this is 1/8 mild steel carbon plate, and I have everything kind of nested and scaled here within fire control. All right, so we went ahead, as you can see in the time lapse, we cut everything out, cut the backs out as well. So now, of course, these have to be formed. We have to bend them, similar to what you see over there. I'll just take my angle finder and kind of just mirror that image to the left side of our turret. Now, the next thing we need to do with this is use these bushings. I need to cut these off here, cut it off this one, along with this ball joint that goes here, and this ball joint, and these bushings once again. Guys, so I went ahead and just mocked this one up, used the same angles as I used over here. I'm gonna hold off on welding these tabs in. I wanna come down here, of course weld in the backside here as much as I can, but I wanna gusset inside here as well as continuing to here and kind of nice and solid. But here's where it gets a little bit weird because I've never done A-arms before, control arms. I think I'm gonna leave these a little bit loose, so if I can come in here, I'll put a nice stitch on them, of course, but if I gotta come in here with the zip disc and take them out, because it's kind of hard mounted here now. I don't have any adjustment via threads or to push pull to do caster camber or anything, so I'm squaring off the tub essentially with my hub, but it all looks square, but when I kind of stand back from it, it looks like it's gone in like that. And I'm after measuring this about 400 times, I'm pretty sure, but so I'm going to keep that a little bit lively because once we do the suspension, once we do the shocks, put a bit of weight in here, I'd have to figure out where I'm going to sit with ride height. And as this comes up through, obviously the stroke, you can see how that reacts. Now, that's essentially how everything else reacts, but if my ride height ends up being here when it's just sitting with no weight into it and my tire's out like this, I think it's gonna look stupid. So I'm gonna keep that a little bit lively so it won't take much to fix if I do, once we do put the suspension, the motor, everything else in and it sits. I don't want my wheels in or out or whatever, so I'm just going to use that. I'm just going to have to use this as an excuse not to weld this out solid right now, but I will put a couple stitches onto it because my goal is to make this thing a roller here tonight. But like I say, I'm going to come in here, probably just box this in just a little touch, box this in a little touch, and that'll give me enough strength that I can put it on its wheels and roll it out. So guys, check this out. I went all in, tacked all this up, bent it, made the same angles, same with the back. Everything is pretty uniform there. Now of course this is at full droop. It actually won't be this tall. This is really hard on my CV axles right now. But I think I will put a limiter strap essentially from here to wherever I'm going to tie in my shock. Now I'm actually thinking about coming up here and creating a hoop type system. And that will tie my shock to the upper, and in the future if I wanted to get something a little bit crazier, I could actually come up here with a hoop and run my shock down there if I want to go, you know, with crazy shocks. But right now we're doing it within a budget, and I'm utilizing what is available to me, which is an old set of Elkas and whatever came off that utility UTV. So, but as you can see, we have them a little bit tacked up. I think that's pretty cool. Now I'll show you this. I think this is what we're actually going to do next, just so we could see. As you can see, this thing, she's wide, boys. She's definitely wide. But I actually blew the hub pattern out of 3/16 plate because I want to utilize these tires. These are what came on the Tearjets. Makes it float, essentially. I mean, you have more air, it's more buoyant. So I want to utilize them. But the weird thing about the Tearjet tire, let me just see if I can get that for you guys. As you can see, it's like a 6-bolt pattern and it's awfully big. So I was thinking, well, it's probably easiest just to modify this, essentially cut this center section out of the wheel, blow out a CNC piece with the proper bolt pattern. That way I don't have to modify the factory bolt pattern that came off of the UTV spindle and hub, because if I wanted to go to a different wheel in the future, it's a lot easier to get this bolt pattern than it is to get that bolt pattern. So what I actually did, like I said, blew this out with the torch and left a little bit of a lip. Now as you can see, this is just tacked in. I want to take that back out and clean that up really well. Put that back in and put a nice bead. I'd say even a few good stitches will be plenty for that. But what I'm actually going to do, guys, because I am dying to see the wheels on this thing, I'm going to kind of dirtedly cut that out, and I'm going to put in the other pieces I'm going to blow out, just so I get the wheels on this, just so I could, I'm just super stoked just to see the wheels on this thing. I just burnt up my drill, and she's kind of been on fire a couple times. So if anyone else has used these Bosch drills and don't think they're worth their weight, I'm after putting this one through. Its pace is pretty good, and it was about time for it to give up. I think it's probably about 8 or 10 years old, and for sure it gets used. So unfortunately right now, I guess I'm going to call it a night until tomorrow morning. Alright guys, next morning, and my drill no longer do drill things. We have a full battery in here, and yeah, I think she's melted inside pretty good. That's all I can do for that. So I had to go first thing this morning and get some mustard tools. The only reason I kind of went with these is because I do have another 2 or 3 batteries kicking around. So let me get this open here. I was looking for the drill. I just wanted the drill really, but this was like $60 more for the kit as opposed to just buying the tools. So whatever, I guess we have drill and a driver now. Kind of curious to see how much torque this thing has. It's quite a bit smaller than the old drill I had. Does that mean less torque? I don't know, we'll find out. Issue. Maybe. So guys, we have a roller. This is probably around the ride height is going to be. It looks insanely wide, but hey, it is what it is. I didn't want to cut my side axles. There's a lot of weak points here now. I don't want to be adding to the weak points. But all I came in here and did, I just cut some 1" by 1" square tubing. Just tacked it to the control arms, just so I can have a roller, just so I can sit. Now, this side, the wheels actually don't look too bad. Once again, the ball joints or nothing are really tightened up. The back spindle isn't tightened up. So this is the side I done yesterday. I picked up a few little tips and tricks from this side, but as you can see on this side, I have some angles to play with. You can see the wheels are kind of out like that, so that's why I kept those tabs in the back on the upper control arm loose. They're just stitched in so I can cut them really quick and just get the proper angle. They're going to move up and down like that, but when it's sitting flat, I at least want them to kind of look symmetrical as much as it can. But we have a roller, guys. Now this makes it really good for me because I need my quick jacks for a quick job, and now I can move this thing and now roll it around. But with that being said, I have, as you can see, no weight on the quick jack. I have a lot of loose ends to kind of clean up here the rest of the week while you guys are chilling out. So on the next video, hopefully I'll have all these control arms and everything welded out solid, front and back. I'll have this fixed, I hope. This is kind of the ride height I want for it, but I'm not sure if I should fix these as I'm welding or, you know, weld everything else and just keep them kind of free, just stitched so they're easily to move and easily to adjust. That's where your HOM joints come in. If I had HOM joints on the upper, I could have maxed them all out or kept them in the middle, and then I could have played with my adjustment that way. But once again, I'm cheap. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna roll this outside and we'll do a quick walk around. So that's going to be a wrap for today's video. As you can see, got my quick jacks back, which now that I think about it, I technically don't have them back because I'm going to have to roll that thing in here eventually and pick it back up, hold everything. So quite a bit of time left on those control arms. Now that was my first time ever making any sort of control arm, so I have a few angles that's off. So with all that being said, if you got this far in the video, I really appreciate you tuning in. If you like this sort of stuff, like I say in every video, there's more where this came from. So if you want to shoot me a like and a subscribe, I hugely appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in.